going to go ahead now and try to bring some of the things together that we talked about in these horses' conformation. And the two primary things that we're going to be looking at here are length of stride, and then we're also going to look at the strength of that horse's stride, or in other words, their drive from their hindquarters. And this horse here really does fit a true, what we would consider to be form to function. As you watch this horse, we talked about his shoulder and how he certainly has that adequate 45-degree angle to his shoulder. And anytime you evaluate a horse's shoulder, you need to know and to understand that whatever that horse's length of shoulder is going to determine his length of stride. And so that his stride length will directly match the angle of his shoulder. And you can clearly see as this horse is easily jogging around here that his front foot reaches to the point of his shoulder. We'll go ahead and have Kathy see if she can move him up into a long trot a little bit, lengthen his stride, and you can still clearly see that he has the capability to reach to the point of his shoulder, but can't reach any further than that. And so depending upon what it is that you're searching for a horse to do, if you're wanting a hunter horse, then you're going to want a horse that has a much more laid back shoulder than this gelding has right here. But for his point in life, he's certainly got an adequate length of stride. And if we go back and we talk about his hindquarter, that's going to be where you're going to see a huge difference in this gelding in comparison to the brown gelding that we watch here in a moment. While this horse has adequate length of stride from his forehand, this horse doesn't drive nearly as hard from his hip or from his hock. He's not able to get his hock up underneath him as far. He's certainly adequate, but nor does this horse have the capability to do what we would call fill his tracks. As you watch him trot around here, his hind leg never reaches to the point of his front leg. So that just simply tells us that this horse doesn't drive near as hard. He's not using his hindquarter quite as hard. We'll go ahead and watch him do the same thing at the lope. Okay, as this horse lopes around here, due to his ability or his conformation, you can see that he does have a fairly flat and level stride. He's able to elevate his shoulder adequately enough to pick up his front leg so that he's not stumbling a lot, which is certainly what we would like to see in an athletic individual. But he's having to work at it. Okay, Kathy's having to work to keep this horse in the lope because he doesn't drive as hard. He somewhat trails his hocks as he lopes and is not consistent in his gait. We can certainly help that out from the standpoint of riding the horse, but just simply watching him in his natural movement, we don't get as much drive from this horse's hindquarters, not as much engagement from his hindquarters as we would certainly like to see. But like I said, he's an example of a horse that we could certainly take in a training regimen and make that work if that's what we so choose to do. We'll go ahead and talk about this brown gelding here and the way he tracks and moves. And I don't think, as a general rule, we could have shown you two better horses in terms of form to function and how these horses move. Everything that we've said in terms of evaluating the horse's balance, in terms of evaluating their structure and their muscling, has certainly held true as we watch these horses track. This brown gelding tends to be maybe a little more upright in his shoulder than the sorrel horse that we showed, and in accordance with that, he certainly showed a little bit shorter length of stride as he moves around here and tracks. But the major difference, or one of the big points that I want to point out about this horse, is if you'll recall back when we talked about the horse's muscling in their shoulders and how this horse carried a little bit more depth in his shoulder and a larger volume of muscle in his shoulder. That's allowed this horse to elevate his shoulder and pick it up a little bit more, which in turn has caused him to be flatter through his knee as he tracks, and maybe a little bit softer mover along the ground. And so that's certainly a bonus in this horse's book. If we'll go ahead and see if we can move him up into a long trot a little bit and extend his length of stride, again we can see that we're not seeing quite the difference in the length or extension of his stride in his front legs as he moves about the ground. But one of the biggest attributes of this horse in my mind as we watch him track is his ability to drive off his hindquarters. This horse really gets his hock up underneath himself and uses himself well, which as we're able here in a moment to move him up into a lope, you'll see that it lends itself very well to a very rhythmical stride for him to be able to lope. So this horse, with the muscling in his hindquarter, certainly allows him to be a high quality mover, and you can see that he keeps his hock way up underneath himself as he tracks and is able to utilize his hindquarter as he moves. This horse, like I said, does have a very rhythmical stride at the lope. You can easily count his rhythm of 1, 2, 3 as he tracks, and that's simply because of his ability to elevate his shoulder and to use his hindquarter every single stride. So he's certainly what we'd like to see in a horse that has a high quality of movement.